His own fans called him a rat, a traitor. They burned his shirt, deleted 6 years of defending him online, turned on a Scouse kid who grew up supporting the club he'd just spent his entire career winning things for. And that was before he played a single minute for Real Madrid. Then he got to Spain, and somehow it got worse. This is the story of how Trent Alexander-Arnold became the only player in modern football to get rejected by the fans who loved him, and exposed by the fans who never did, and why almost nobody who is paying attention is surprised. To understand where Trent is now, you have to understand what he actually was at his peak. Because when he broke into Liverpool's first team, he was genuinely unlike anything English football had seen at right back. Not just a defender who could pass, a defender who could orchestrate 40-yard diagonals to the back post, whipped crosses from angles that shouldn't be possible, creative vision that most central midfielders would trade their starting spot for. Klopp saw it from day one. His brilliance going forward is out of this world. In 2019, Liverpool won the Champions League. In 2020, they won their first league title in 30 years. And throughout both of those campaigns, Trent wasn't just contributing to the attack. He was directing it, like a conductor who happened to be standing at right back. Gary Neville, a man who has never given a compliment he didn't feel was 3 years overdue, said plainly, he could be one of the best right backs ever. Klopp went even further when critics started whispering, if someone says Trent can't defend, come and tell me. Bold, confident, the kind of statement that ages either very well or very badly. We'll come back to that. At that point, the hype felt like an understatement. Liverpool fans weren't just proud of him, they owned him. He was theirs. Academy product, local kid, one of them. The kind of player you build statues for. Which is exactly what makes what happened next so brutal. On the 3rd of June 2025, Real Madrid officially announced the signing of Trent Alexander-Arnold. And Anfield, metaphorically, lost its mind. Not with celebration, not with pride that one of their own was going to the biggest club in the world. With fury. Liverpool fans who had defended him for years, who had argued with every critic, who had quoted his trophy count like a weapon, turned on him instantly, completely, ruthlessly. Rat, that was the word being used most. Traitor, that one too. Shirts being burned, social media posts deleted, 6 years of loyalty treated like it had never happened because he had the audacity to want something different for his career. Now, look, football tribalism is what it is. Fans are allowed to feel betrayed. That's part of the deal. When you love a player like Liverpool fans loved Trent, the departure feels personal even when it isn't. But here's what's interesting about the reaction. It wasn't just anger. It was relief of a different kind. Because for years, Liverpool fans had been the ones defending Trent from criticism. His defenders in the media. His shield against every pundit who questioned his defending. And the second he left, that obligation disappeared. Suddenly, the same people who had been saying, but the assists though, for 6 years were the ones making the clips of his defensive mistakes go viral. It turns out the loyalty wasn't always conditional. The defending was always a problem. They just didn't want to admit it while he was still wearing the shirt. And then Trent arrived in Madrid, where nobody had ever been loyal to him in the first place. The defensive issues were never hidden. They were always there. Wingers beating him one-on-one, counter-attacks pouring into the space he'd just vacated. And the thing is, even the people who loved him most couldn't fully pretend it wasn't happening. Gary Neville said he could be the best ever. He also said Trent has to work on his defending. Both things were true simultaneously. People just chose which one to tweet. Roy Keane watched a defensive mistake and called it,
"This is like schoolboy stuff,"
which, from Keane, is practically a measured response. But the most revealing thing was not said by a critic, by his biggest supporter. Jamie Carragher, who has backed Trent through everything, who defended him in every debate, who loves the kid, said this, "If he played in my team, I'd have to protect him. Protect him. Defenders protect teams. That is the position. That is the entire point. But the strongest endorsement his most loyal ally could manage was that a team would need to architect itself around protecting him. That's not a compliment dressed up as one. That's the diagnosis, delivered gently by someone who didn't want to say it out loud. And then Trent went on record with something that sounded like confidence at the time. Mistakes don't really bother me. Great mindset for a striker. Questionable philosophy for a defender who keeps making the same ones. Because here's the thing, when a defender says mistakes don't bother him, and the mistakes keep coming, at some point that's not resilience. That's just a pattern without consequences. Until the consequences finally arrived in Madrid. Here's the part Liverpool fans really don't want to hear. Klopp didn't fix Trent's defensive problems. He made them irrelevant. By pushing Trent into a half midfielder role during build-up, Klopp removed him from defensive situations before they could develop. The press suffocated opponents. The structure covered his side. The entire system was quietly, brilliantly engineered so that Trent's weaknesses rarely became problems. It was tactical genius. It was also a life support machine for a flaw that never actually went away. And life support machines only work while they're switched on. When the squad aged, when the press became inconsistent, when the midfield legs that covered Trent's space slowed down, suddenly every team in the Premier League was running the same play. Attack down Trent's side, because they'd been watching the tape for years. They knew what happened when the system broke, and now the system was breaking every other week. Roy Keane, watching another implosion, said what a growing number of people were thinking. They're talking about Real Madrid? He'll be going to Tranmere. Keane is Keane. The man has criticised corner flag technique. But that clip didn't spread because it was outrageous. It spread because people rewound the footage and thought, he's not entirely wrong. And the uncomfortable truth is that Klopp, the man who built the machine, who loved Trent, who publicly defended him at every turn, was also the only reason the machine kept running. When Klopp left, the protection left with him. And Trent's next destination had absolutely no interest in building a new one. Real Madrid is the most unforgiving environment in world football. Not because the fans are cruel, because they're honest. Brutally, immediately, publicly honest in ways that clubs like Liverpool, where emotional loyalty softens every verdict, simply aren't. The Bernabeu booed Ramos. It turned on Benzema during rough patches. It watched Bale slowly disintegrate into a meme while wearing the white shirt and responded with a hostility that became international news. Reputation in Madrid lasts exactly as long as your last good performance, not 1 second longer. And Trent arrived at the Bernabeu carrying the weight of a Liverpool fan base that had just called him a rat, and walked straight into a stadium full of people who had never cared about him at all. No Klopp, no press system, no 30 years of hurt emotional narrative making the crowd more forgiving than the football deserved. Spanish pundits, who had zero investment in the Trent Alexander-Arnold story, just watched the games, and what they said was devastating in its simplicity. He doesn't cut passes, doesn't sprint, doesn't win duels. No caveats, no system excuses, no, but the assists though. Just a cold, clean assessment of a defender who, without a system built around protecting him, doesn't defend. The same clips, the same criticisms, the same questions that had followed him for 6 years in England, now in Spanish. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern that crossed a continent. So why does all of this feel satisfying? Because for 6 years, the legitimate conversation about Trent's defending was constantly buried. Buried under trophies, under Klopp's authority, under assists so beautiful your brain temporarily forgot what it was worried about, and under the fierce, conditional loyalty of a fan base who would defend him right up until the moment they decided to destroy him instead. Asking, but can he defend? Got you called a hater, got you a trophy count fired back at you, got you, if someone says Trent can't defend, come and tell me, quoted like scripture. Well, someone came and told them, repeatedly, in La Liga, with footage, with Spanish subtitles. And what's satisfying isn't that Trent is struggling, it's that for the first time in his career, he is operating in an environment that is completely, refreshingly, mercilessly honest. The Liverpool fans who loved him conditionally already showed their hand the day they called him a rat for choosing his own career. And the Madrid fans who never loved him at all are showing their hand every week at the Bernabeu. What's left? Stripped of the system, stripped of the loyalty, stripped of the trophies and the narrative and the protection, is just the football. And the question that was always there, now being asked in the loudest stadium in the world: can you actually defend? Trent himself once said mistakes don't really bother him. I genuinely hope he meant it, because right now, at Real Madrid, without Klopp's machine running in the background, without a fan base willing to absorb every error in exchange for the next spectacular assist, the mistakes are all anyone is talking about. And nobody here is protecting anyone.